Last week, NEMA mounted an operation to evict encroachers in Rubigi and Busega wetlands. The operation left hundreds stranded as their illegal structures were demolished by several hired men assisted by the police. In some of these areas, taxi operators had established tax parks and they were neither spared. However, this is not the first time that the environmental watchdog NEMA cracks the whip in the same areas.
We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to go back. Human beings are such that they will attempt to break the law to the extent possible, but they are aware that they are doing wrong.
However, NEMA has been repeatedly accused of selective application of the law by evicting the poor and leaving huge structures untouched. A case in point are the wetlands at Muyenga Bukasa at the shores of Lake Victoria, which have been occupied by illegal permanent buildings, but little has been done to deal with the encroachers.
We are aware and we will be going ecosystem by ecosystem. We started with Lubigi, we'll go to Chinawataka, we will go to Butabika, we'll go to Chetinda, we'll go to all these ecosystems. Meanwhile, also in rural areas. And NEMA is not the only agency that is responsible for managing natural resources. For example, those people who have built big structures in wetlands have land titles. So these are processes and organizations that are overlapping. Those that haven't, you think that have not been touched, it's because the renewed restoration cycle has not reached at their door, but each one of them will be reached.
The 7 hills that form Kampala Capital City Authority are gifted with wetlands downstream, which are the catchment areas into Lake Victoria, a shared resource in the East African region. But most of these wetlands have been wiped out and have become settlements, while the others are being occupied by factories.
What do? They filter water that comes from from hills, from ecosystems. From 7 hills down to valleys, to wetlands, to get processed, to get filtrated before it is deposited into Lake Victoria to supply a greater majority of Ugandans with water. So when you tamper with wetlands, then you're tampering with water. Remember the old childish saying, water is life? What does that mean? That the cost of treating water is going to increase. Who's going to bear the burden of increased water costs? You, the consumer, you and I.
It is projected that Uganda will lose all her wetlands by 2040 if nothing is done to restore the already degraded wetlands.
I think we're 24%, somewhere in the 80s, but right now the total wetland acreage is 10.4, including degraded and intact, but the actual intact is 8.9 as we speak. By 2040, we will be at 1 if we do not protect or if there are no mitigation measures put in place.
Environmental watchdog NEMA have warned all wetland encroachers to vacate them immediately before they are forcefully pushed out.
NEMA is going to come after those that are in wetlands, not for our own sake, but for the sake of humanity, for the sake of the well-being of Ugandans. We may come tomorrow, we may come next month, or next year, but we are coming. Do not waste your time investing in wetlands.
Indeed, in some areas, the effects of climate change arising out of degraded environment are beginning to bite, even when NEMA may not take action in the areas affected.
Floods, nature has its own way of restoring itself. Floods, the raising water levels recently chased away very many people from the lake shores. Climate change has its negative impacts, but has its way of reawakening people.
Jingo Francis, NTV.